Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broken. I'm your host, Jamie Lima, and founder of Allegiant Divorce Solutions, where we help people prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce. This podcast is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. Today's guest, Gail Showalter, is someone who's walked the road so many of you are on. Gail raised 3 children as a single mother, spent over 2 decades as an educator in both regular and special education, and later became a certified professional coach. She's the founder of Single Moms Empowered, a nonprofit supporting single mothers in earning degrees that lead to meaningful employment. Her book, Living, Learning, and Loving, shares her story of navigating life's hardest seasons and coming out stronger. Gail brings both empathy and wisdom to the conversation, helping single moms and all women rebuilding after divorce find the confidence to own their story and take some bold, forward-moving steps. So grab a cup of coffee, your beverage of choice, buckle up, once again, get you personally and financially empowered. Gail, it's so great to have you with us here today.
Glad to be here. Really glad.
Yeah, so you've been run through the ringer in your life. It sounds like you've had all kinds of experiences with divorce and raising kids and being a single mom and managing the finances, which is all of the stuff that a lot of the people that we work with have to deal with themselves. And even if they're going through a divorce at the moment and they're not quite single yet, there will be a time in the future that they're going to have to handle that. And even some of the dads out there can probably benefit. The soon-to-be single dads can probably benefit from your message as well. But I know specifically you work with single women, and being raised by one myself, I can appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for doing it. So why don't you share a little bit about the work that you do, and we can go from there.
Great. Yeah. I was single for 16 years, raising 3 kids, and those 3 kids were born in 37 months. So I don't recommend that. Ooh. But I mean, I had 3 babies in diapers. It was really something. So I had all of that. And then when the youngest one was 3 years old, their dad walked, and we were left with a lot to change, a lot of change. You know, the rug was pretty much pulled out from under us. And I did receive child support. And I will say there are so many women I work with who manage without any child support. You know, let's see, 10 million single moms in the United States, 1/3 of them live in poverty. And we have a lot of missing dads. So I hope if you're a dad out there listening, you'll gain something from this conversation. One of the things I did learn a lot about was managing money. I remember I spent hours. I would sit down an old computer in those days and try to figure out, okay, I've got this much money coming once a month. I got paid once a month, and it's got to last. And that means I've got to figure out what groceries we're going to have, who's going to get shoes this month, who's going to get a coat in the fall. And I tell people all the time, the hardest 2 times financially of the year for single parents is when school starts and Christmas. And somehow I never could get through Christmas without credit cards. And that was not the best way. I have to say it wasn't the best. Ironically, that we're having this discussion because last Saturday we had our organization hosted a financial wellness workshop that was put on by a local credit union. So we can talk about that a little bit later, but I learned a lot. I wish I had learned it many years ago, though, because I really didn't do the best with all the money. But the thing was, I knew I was fortunate because I saw other moms who didn't have child support, didn't have a degree. I could teach school, not necessarily my first choice, but I could teach school, and I did get insurance that way. And I tell moms that, you know, if you can get insurance, that's a big plus. That's more of a big plus than necessarily the salary you're starting at. And so those are all things to consider. But for me, it was a hard walk. And there was a lot of debt that I had accumulated. I managed to knock it down, but it was really tough to do. Because with 3 kids, there's always somebody needing something, you know, and you feel kind of guilty, and you want them to be able to be in Little League, or you want them to take dance lessons or whatever. And so somehow or another, you sacrifice to make that happen. And I think what you sacrifice is saving money, is putting any money away at all. And so that's my story. And I can go on and on about the dilemmas that I see working with single moms, which I've been doing since 2007. And do a lot of things with them. And they have a lot of struggles. And, it just isn't getting better. I wish I could say it was, but it isn't getting better.
Yeah. And that's where we come in a lot of times in these divorces, is trying to help people. First off, there's an educational component of it, because to your point, and we can talk a little bit about the educational, the how you got your education in this too. We can go back to that, but they just don't teach you this stuff in school, right? And they maybe if you're lucky taught you how to balance a checkbook. If you were lucky, we never got that kind of education in our schools. Let alone learning how to invest and how to pick the right insurance and all the stuff that we do as financial professionals and help our clients through. So kudos to you for, kind of taking the bull by the horns there and teaching yourself in many ways. And now, doing that work and helping others, because I think we all need such, education around this. And, a lot of, as you were kind of going through your background and your experience there, I was like having flashbacks of my own childhood and watch my mother go through a lot of the same things. And you remember, did you ever use layaway? That my mother was a big fan of layaway.
We lay away the Christmas tree. And it was one of these plastic Christmas trees at Walmart. And I had to put it on layaway for Christmas. And we used
I don't even know if they do that anymore. I mean, they probably want you to get their credit card and pay the interest on it if you're doing that. But I think my mother would start Christmas shopping in like July, and buy all the stuff and put it on layaway. And $10 a week, $20 a week, whatever it was, she could put towards those gifts, because you're absolutely right. Christmas and birthdays and then if you have kids that are going in extracurriculars,
yes,
like baseball or even worse, hockey. Oh, forget it, because it is tough. I mean, just trying to get kids in sports and pay for, I see people struggle with it all the time.
On the drill team, they get on a drill team and, oh my goodness, it's expensive. And I was teaching in the high school at the time where my daughter was getting in the drill team. And I said, you're going to have to get a babysitting job or something. I can't afford all of this.
Yeah.
And I even talked to the director about it. I said, it shouldn't be this expensive for a girl to be on a drill team, but and then nowadays they expect the parents to provide Kleenex and all these things for the classrooms. When I was growing up, that wasn't the case, but it is now. Yeah.
Do you think that's one of the most impactful financial shocks that single moms face? Just the unexpected. I like those types of things, like being able to you have to pitch in now for every kid's school classroom and all these others. Do you think those are the surprises or the biggest shocks, or is there something else?
Well, when school starts now, every teacher has this list. I mean, I think it's this way across the country. This list of all the supplies she wants the child to come with. And in fact, they keep the list at Walmart and places like that. You can go there and here's the list for so-and-so and what first grade at such and such school. And your child is expected to show up with all of this. Whether it's a plastic backpack that they can see through, go figure. And then it's got to be, X number of pencils and color and certain kinds of erasers and this and that and the other thing. And it's a huge impact. And that's one of the things the organization I'm in helps with. And there are a lot of churches that'll help with this sort of thing. But, it gets hard. And then depending on where you live, you're going to need coats and you're going to need certain kind of shoes that kids don't wear in the summertime necessarily. Some schools don't want them any have open-toed shoes and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And it's a different world. But yeah, it's expensive and it does hit very hard. Now, Christmas, you can kind of adjust, but the very best thing I ever did was to join a Christmas club at the bank. And it took me years to make myself do it. But I realized every Christmas I was just going in the hole, even with simple things, even though I had a mom kind of helping me. But, In those days, you had Toys R Us. That's before they went bankrupt or whatever. And they would send out this catalog. And I would give it to my children and I would say, now, you can check off some things that you want. But I didn't get paid until the 25th of the month. But in December, the check came earlier because I was a school teacher and, they let us get paid when we got out. So I had to wait until that paycheck came on that day. And I would go to Toys R Us and stand in the line and get those things. I mean, a few things that they wanted. And, I remember to this day, and this has been a long time ago, I remember standing in that checkout line with tears streaming down my face, thinking this is not the way it's supposed to be. And yet they made it. They're grown. They have kids. They've survived, and they're doing well. But I think, like you being raised by a single mom, you learn a lot growing up that way that you might not have learned if you'd been coddled and given everything you needed. But, tough roads. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's my experiences effectively shaped the entirety of my career, and which is mainly why I got into the work that I do. And now my own divorce, and the experiences I had going through that myself as an adult is what prompted me to get into the world of divorce financial planning that I've been doing for the last, several years. So do you feel like, looking back at the kids now, that you think, though, like, how did they leverage those experiences? Like, because it's so impactful as kids. Like, one of the things I keep hearing a lot of people talk about is this scarcity mindset. Do any of them suffer from that at all, or?
I know they don't, but
good.
I will say I have 3 children, and I did personality training a long time ago, probably 25 years ago. So I do a lot with personalities, and all 3 of my children have drastically different personalities. So they each handled it very differently. And I tell people all the time, if you have a daughter, she needs her daddy. I mean, the pain that has been caused in that relationship is probably the worst, because he kind of detached. When he remarried, he just kind of detached from her. It was very difficult for many years. And that was most difficult situation, was the relationships there. But as far as with money, each one was very different. She's a spender. And she's had to learn, and she's 50 years old now. She's learned. Yeah. And I was so proud of her when she started using coupons and learning how she could really do that. And then, but the other 2, one of them is very, very, very good with money. Studied Dave Ramsey, did all the stuff, and, and very helpful with money. The other one has his own business. He's doing fine. But the thing is, you have to understand your child. And if I had known, that's what old people say, if I'd known then what I know now, I could have handled how they understood money better. And I did do some things. I did try to make them value that. But I told a friend one time, she was talking to me because she was a mother of my son's best friend, and they had plenty of money. And she said something to me one time. She says, I don't understand. I don't know what I need to do to get him to appreciate the value of money. And I said, well, my kids didn't appreciate it till they went to work, and they got a paycheck, and they saw the withdrawals from that paycheck, and they saw how much it took to earn $1. But that I'm always saying to single moms, work is not a dirty word, and there's nothing wrong with enforcing the fact that your child needs to understand work, whether it's at home or on the job with someone else. But when they're on the job with someone else, they start to really appreciate it. But I'm a big believer in work. I grew up raised by Irish and Dutch people and real hardworking folks, and the work ethic was just drilled into us, And I have kids now, grandchildren as well, working. And they're appreciated because they go to work on time. They don't stay on their phones. And that's funny to me that makes them a good employee. But, they understand what it means to work. And a lot of young people that I see, and I know I'm old and I probably see things a little differently, but you got to please your employer. That's part of jobs is pleasing the employer. I just heard a story this morning from someone here at the house that some people are being fired. And I said, well, why are they being fired? Well, because they stay on their phones at work instead of getting the work done. My son's an excellent job at a big company. And he just gets furious with these people who get on their phones at work instead of doing what they're supposed to do. So, yeah,
you think it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, really.
You think it would be a no-brainer. And so I want to stick with this the employment concept here for a second, because a lot of the work that you do with the Single Moms Empowered is focusing on education that ultimately leads to employment, right? Mm-hmm. So why, from your perspective, I would venture to guess, and you can tell me I'm wrong, that career focused education is incredibly important for financial independence, I would presume. And
it's hard for me.
So how are you helping these clients figure that all out?
Well, first of all, they come to us with the attitude that this is what I want. They know this. I'm not one of these people that thinks everybody needs to have a degree. I'm not, but I do think, because my three grown children, none of them have a degree. We couldn't afford college. There was just no way. Okay. And the boys really didn't want to go into a classroom at all. And so they didn't go to college, but they've done really, really well because of this work ethic they've got. And one of them is very gifted in mechanical things and computer things. And so he's been selected to do a lot of really amazing things. And so my husband has three grown children, and they aren't college graduates, but they're good employees. So no, I don't think you have to have that. However, I think for single women in the United States, it's still better for them if they have some sort of certificate or skill or degree that leads to employment. And that goes especially in the Black community, because the majority of the single moms, unfortunately, are Black women. I don't have the figures, but that is the majority. And we work with different races. It doesn't matter to us. In fact, you can see up here on the wall, I've got several pictures of our graduates. Now, what I want to say about this, though, is that the only women we pick are women that are motivated. They are already enrolling themselves. They already have a plan and a goal. We don't, anybody that comes to us that's just kind of wishy-washy, not real sure about what they want to do, we don't mess with that. But we haven't had any trouble finding women that are highly motivated. And it's a lot easier now because they can do some of this online. That's a whole lot easier for a single mom to do. And yet some of them will want to pick a career, or maybe nursing, for example. Registered nursing is a really tough college program to go through. Anyway, if you're a single mom, it's really tough. So our moms might go through a 2 or 3 year program to be an LVN, a licensed vocational nurse, which is a real good stepping stone, but there is a high demand for them. And we want them to get degrees, not like my degree was, speech and theater and all that, art. We don't want them to do that. We want them to get degrees where they can step right into the job market. And that's been what's happened with ours. It's been, radiology, nursing, some in business. We had one police officer. She trained for a few years. She's a police officer, a fantastic girl. And then we have some that are, one I know of that's a dental hygienist. So there are degrees out there that you can get in a few years, sometimes 2 years, that you can step right into a job. And that's what we want our women to do. And I'm talking to the United States here, I presume. So, there are colleges all over that offer these kinds of things. vocational, technical colleges. So these are degrees that are worth getting. A lot of, as I understand it, in fact, I just read in the newspaper this week, the people who are coming out of college right now with 4-year degrees are having a lot of trouble getting a job. So, you go in, you get a liberal arts or a general studies degree, don't count on a job. You want to get a skill, something that people really are looking for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what I'm seeing now, so a couple things. My wife is an RN. She's been a registered nurse for many, many years now. She's creeping up on 25 years of being an RN. And you're right, the education piece of it is very challenging, but she's had an amazing career. So if you're listening and that's the path you want to go down, you can commit to it and you can find a way to commit to it. I can tell you, first person that I've seen, I watched her career over the last 7 or 8 years, and it's been incredible to watch. And the one as you were kind of walking us through, and then you mentioned the people that come to you that are kind of wishy-washy, right? And about this whole and being dedicated to this, which I can appreciate. We want to work with people ourselves who are committed to this and committed to getting the help that they need. And because we meet with a lot of people, and some people are just like, you can tell right away that they're not going to be a fit for the work that you do. But do you feel like, is it a confidence thing? Is it because when you emerge from divorce or you're going through divorce, a lot of the women that we work with, I can tell that they feel a little bit, invisible. They're kind of depleted because this divorce just sucked the life out of them. So is it a confidence thing? And if it is a confidence thing, and that these people want the help, how do you get them over that? Because if you're stuck in survival mode, so to speak, it's really tough to focus on the future. If you can barely get through today, how can you plan for what life's going to be after a 3-year LVM program? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay. Well, yes, I can talk about that. It took me 2 years to get back on my feet. I mean, the grief I was going through was just unbelievable. No one in my family had gone through this. I didn't have anybody close to me that I could, bare my soul to, really. And that's one thing you need when you're going through that kind of a trauma, is somebody you can lean on. You need a good counselor. And usually in any community, you will find there are counselors, maybe through a church, who are on a sliding scale, and you can afford it. Find a counselor if you're fresh in this experience. And yes, don't expect too much out of yourself. Understand that you've got to get through this. This is like grief for a lot of people. Now, not for all. Some of the moms I've worked with, they were needed to get out of that marriage. It was abusive. They needed to walk away, and they did, with the very clothes on their backs. So, there's different situations. But it does take your confidence away. I mean, you've given yourself, you've birthed your children to this person, and he's gone. Well, what are you going to do? It took me a couple of years, and I knew I had to go to work, and I knew I had a teaching certificate, so I could go to work. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to leave my babies, but I had to. So I went to work, and I wasn't the best. I was unhappy, and it took me a long time, like I said. But my big turning point was when I made a decision that if I was going to stay in this career, the only way to increase my salary now and into the future was if I got a higher level degree. And I actually gathered a lot of information, which I highly recommend women doing. And I went back to college. Now, I moved my children and myself. I must have been nuts. I moved my children and myself to Austin, 5 hours away. And I went to the University of Texas, Hook'em Horns, and I got my master's degree. It took 3 summers and a lot of effort, but I did it bit by bit. In fact, that was the first publication I ever got published in, was talking about this, going back to college as a single person. So I was real fortunate. UT had a program at the time for continuing education for older adults. Guess how old you had to be for this program? 23. To be an older student. Oh boy, was I 23? I was more like 33, I think. But anyway, I went back And I took one little step at a time. I mean, I had to take the GRE. I hadn't taken a standardized test in 18 years. I got through it. I got accepted. Then I had to find a place to live. Then I had a place for the kids. So what I did was just a leap of faith each step of the way. I didn't eat the whole enchilada at once. And I tell single mom this a lot. I said, you set a goal that's reasonable, but do your homework, do your research, and then take one bite at a time. And then see if the doors opened. My doors opened miraculously, I will have to say. But I did that, and that improved my income. And I thought maybe it would maybe give me a chance for a better job. And ultimately, what it did was it opened a door for me to be recruited to teach children who were blind in 2 school districts. So I ended up being a Braille. I had to go back to the University of Texas for this, but I did it. And it was probably the most blessing, honor I've ever had, teaching a kid to read Braille. And so it was hard as heck, but it was worth it. I still am communicating with these women that are now grown. And so what I'm saying to the listeners is, set a reasonable goal. Even though you don't feel confident, do something for yourself, for your future, that will help you to feel better about yourself. And it's okay. I mean, I was thinking this morning, is it okay for me to feel good about the degrees I've received? And I thought, you know what? It is. It's okay. It's okay for me to feel good about that. And I have gotten other certifications and various things, and it builds your confidence. But if you're going to sit back and wallow in self-pity, it's not going to work. You're not going to get anywhere with that.
This actually you're kind of talking a little bit about this right now. One of my next questions as you were walking us through that, what came to mind was the guilt that must be associated with you have some kids at home, and you have to provide for them. You're taking these leaps of faith and so on and so forth. And you've moved your family 5 hours away with basically figuring out as you go. So there's often a lot of guilt that's wrapped up in parenting, working, rebuilding, all of these things. So how were you able to let go of that? Because I'm sure that crept up a little bit.
Well, that's a good question. Yes, it did. I treated it like it was an adventure. I said, we're going to go on this adventure. Now, the kids were, maybe 10, 9, and 7. I mean, they were, like I said, they're real close together. So I said, this is an adventure. We're going to go on this adventure. And it turned out it was a good adventure. I had a cousin living in Austin. They made sure they had fun. We went to the parks and swam and Eddie and all of that you do in Austin. And they met some friends, and they got to play and do some things they might not have gotten to do if they had stayed at home. And they weren't quite old enough to really feel like they had been taken away from their friends. So that helped, because if they had been in their early teens, it would have been more difficult. But I will tell you this, they were whining and complaining at first. And so I had to rent mattresses for this little bedroom where they were in, so they'd have something to sleep on. And they were complaining and carrying on about this and that. And I said, what we're going to do? Tonight, I want you to name 3 things that happened today that you're happy about. And so, they're young enough that you can do that. And it worked. And so it got to where it was a plan. Every night we did that. And it changed their attitudes, just like they tell adults, start being grateful every night for something. And during the day, you start thinking of things you're going to be grateful for. And so they did that, and it worked. But like I said, they were at an age, a formative age, where you could do that. I don't know if I recommend the same thing for older kids, because these kids were put in daycare, and a good daycare. That was just a fluke that I was able to do that, because most of the time in Austin, the good daycares are blocked out for the summer, especially when you got 3 kids, not just 1 kid. But I was lucky.
Yeah.
And so, it was an adventure.
It was an adventure. I mean, that's for sure. And it sounds like everybody got through it, which is nice to hear. And the work that you're doing is remarkable. I mean, I think there's so many more, so many more people out there should be doing the education of all this stuff, because Apparently, there's not a lot of it out there. So you keep doing what you're doing. This is what I would consider I call the carte blanche segment of our conversation today before we wrap it up. Any questions I should have asked you that I didn't ask, or anything you want to share with the audience that we didn't cover today?
Well, you might say how to get through day to day. And I think that each day, like I said, be thankful, but you need to have a calendar, and on each day you need to be planning, and you plan each dollar. You don't just let things go. There were times when I was exhausted. I know that feeling. And so if moms want to connect with me, they can do that. And if they have questions, even if there's someone in your area or in the States here, anywhere that wants to start a nonprofit like this, I'd be very happy to talk to them about it. So mostly it's that. I have several topics that I cover on YouTube, but mostly I just advocate for single moms. It's just in my heart. I'm a passion about it. It's tough, and I'm glad you understand that as your mom went through it.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we didn't have that experience, but I think it's in many ways has been a blessing to me later on in life and been able to help more people. And I think, we're just going to keep doing what we can with this type of messaging and a lot of the work we do on social media and out there with just trying to put a lot of free education out there and sharing stories like this one to let people know that, whether male or female or whatever, there are people out here that are trying to do the best that they can to support you and get you through it. Because you mentioned something earlier, and I forgot to comment on it, but you were talking about getting yourself a good therapist and a good someone to rely on and be able to share these feelings with and so on. And I say it all the time, and you've probably heard me say it in some of the previous podcasts, is that it is incredibly important to create team you as you're going through this divorce, right? Because you need your financial person, your legal person, your divorce coach, your therapist, whoever, your religious support groups, whatever it is that's going to work for you. I did not do that. I was not very good at that in my own divorce. And looking back, that's probably one of the bigger mistakes that I made, because I didn't put myself in a position to be open and get that support that I needed, which could have been powerful.
You mentioned a team. I have a group now that meets on the second Saturdays, single mom Zoom meeting, and all it is just a networking for moms to connect with people. It can be, they can live anywhere. They have questions. We have coaches on, we have social workers on. So it's free. It's just a way to do it. They can get that on my website. So
love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, you have to. You just can't go it alone. It's impossible. You need the support. So thank you, Gail. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, your honesty, the heart that you shared with us, your hard-won wisdom, all of it. It's been a blessing to have you here today. Thank you for reminding us that rebuilding isn't just possible, but it's also powerful. And to learn more about Gail's work, visit her nonprofit, Single Moms Empowered, and check out her book, Living, Learning, Loving, available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. You can also follow her on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all linked in the show notes. And we'll make sure we share that second Saturday Zoom meeting that you have as well for everybody. So if they want to join you on that, they will certainly pop in and let Gail know that you found out about it here. I would love to know that we're making an impact in everybody's life. So if you're a single mom trying to get your finances in order after divorce, Allegiant Divorce Solutions is here to walk you through that process. Visit us at Allegiant DS for financial clarity and support. Please subscribe to Broke Up Not Broken for more stories that will help you find strength in your next chapter. Until next time, everybody.